Hey listeners, welcome back to Sumi's Chai and Chat, episode number 6. I am continuing talking about Gandhi's married life in this episode and enjoy. In this episode, we will see how Gandhi was drawn to Kasturbai and talks about his lustful love versus pure love for his wife. And what are the things he had in his mind for his wife? Remember, they both were married when they were young, like 13 years old. However, Gandhi had ambition, which developed later on and became more serious, whereas Kasturbai was illiterate and she didn't even know how to read and write, and therefore she was satisfied with her house chores and at the same time very faithful wife for her husband, that is Gandhi. Talking about ambition for his wife, Gandhi wanted to make Kasturbai live a pure life and learn what Gandhi had learned, and also identify her life throughout with his life, which she did. By all means, she did exactly that. And this was his ambition in the beginning of their married life. And he doesn't remember if Kasturbai really had that ambition, but in Hindu society or Indian society, women were trained to think in a certain way and be dedicated to the husband and the families, and that's the family that when they go to their husband's life, that becomes their family. Apart from being ambitious about his wife, Gandhi was also passionately fond of her. He said that he used to think of her when he was at school, and he would think of the night to being together, and he would feel nervous and all those things that usual kids feel when they are in school or high school especially. And he also used to talk a lot to Kasturbai, so he would keep her awake all night, and then they would have trouble next day doing their house chores in the morning. Although Gandhi was passionate about teaching Kasturbai, making her a better person, in quotes he calls reform her, he had lustful love for Kasturbai, which acted like a barrier from where he wanted to teach her language or teach her reading, writing, Gujarati as well, and he could never get to that. Kasturbai didn't have all those ambitions, nor she was interested in learning, and therefore when he decided to give up the lustful love, or when his love became more pure, he was already more engaged in public life and he didn't have time to put in to provide that education, experience for Kasturbai to make her, in quotes, a lady for Gandhi. An interesting thing that caught my eyes here was when the children got married, they were not allowed to live together for extended periods of time. He said they would live together for only 50% of their time. For example, between the age of 13 and 18, in that 5-year span, they were not even together for 3 years. And Kasturbai would spend half of her time at her parents'. This is his early life with marriage, and after he was 18, Gandhi moved to London to do his studies, that is law, and after that he was going up and down India, South Africa, and he was more doing public work than focusing on his public life. And therefore Gandhi mentions in his book that they hardly stayed together after 18 years old, when he was 18 years old, because he was so occupied in all the other work that came in. And he is happy though, because he was free from those lustful thoughts, because he was a dedicated husband towards his wife, and he was more occupied towards his reform, public work, and other things that he was involved in, and that kept him occupied. So in a way he's thankful that they didn't stay together. The only regret I see that from his experience is he really wished to teach her, or use the pure love instead of lustful love, so he could make her a better person in terms of giving her education, giving her ability to read, and be more independent of herself. With this, I think I would like to end this episode, because it's not that much explained by Gandhi on this topic especially. There is one more scenario where he goes into his lustful love scenario when his dad or his father was on the deathbed. We will talk about it later, because that's actually a very big transformative experience that brought in Gandhi, and he talks about that several times in his book. Coming back to Gandhi and his wife and his child marriage and his experience, let's look our life and reflect on that. Take some time to think about what we were when we were between 13 and 18, and what were our commitments at that time. I know in the Western world it is very different, in a way that children are focused on the school education, and then they move out of their parents' house around 16, 17 years old. Whereas in India, where I grew up, during that time we stayed with my parents. We stay with our parents until we become externally we are forced to leave the house, or we get a job somewhere else, or of course getting married. Those are the scenarios I can think of when coming to leaving my parents' house. However, between 13 and 18, me as a teenager, it was more focused on the studies, and there were these small instances where we have crushes on boys, or the boys have crushes on girls, and that is a hot topic to talk about between friends. And it is part of natural growth for a child, because it is at that age their reproductive systems are also growing, and that's the biggest growth that happens during that phase. And constantly kids are thinking about their own bodies internally and aware of the changes that's happening. Apart from that, I think also relationships is the second one. Make a lot of friends. We give a lot of preference to who our friends are and how our friends are, and many of us also think of being popular among our friends group. So take time as my listeners. I would like to give you this leave you with the thought of thinking about going back to your 13 and 18 years of age. If you are older than that, if you are younger than that, or if you are in that age, then you can think what you're going through right now, reflect on that, and you can write in your journal, or you can leave me a comment. All right, that's it for this episode, and I will see you all again soon. Bye.